So the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall play a major role in movement of the trunk. They are mainly three oblique muscles and the transversus abdominis, external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis. These are the three main anterior abdominal muscles. Okay. What are the functions? They help in protecting the abdominal organs and they increase the intra-abdominal pressure and aid in expiration and all the straining activities such as micturition, coughing and vomiting. And these anterior abdominal wall muscles, these are supplied by lower 5 intercostal nerve and the subcostal nerve. Subcostal nerve root value is T12. Okay, so mainly lower 6 thoracic nerves. Okay, this strong abdominalis, these are important in helping to stabilize the trunk. Okay, they act on the vertebral column mainly and they support the spine, they flex and rotate the trunk. Okay, and acting with the adductors and abductors of the hip, they help to stabilize the pelvis during walking and running. So these are the main functions of the anterior abdominal wall muscles. Fan gulo chalao na ekটু. So, what we will get during dissection of the abdomen? First, there is skin. Okay. After reflecting the skin, you will get the superficial fascia. In the superficial fascia, here you will get two layers. Okay. Fascia of Camper, that is fatty layer, it is superficial one, and fascia of Scarpa, that is membranous layer. These two are together forming the superficial fascia here. And in the abdomen, deep fascia is absent. Okay, so after the superficial fascia, you will reach the muscles. First, outermost is the external oblique muscle, then the internal oblique muscle, then transversus abdominis muscle. Okay, then there will be fascia transversalis, extraperitoneal fatty tissue, then innermost will be the peritoneum. Okay, peritoneum has again two layers. Parietal peritoneum is lining the wall of the abdomen and the visceral peritoneum which is covering the internal abdominal organs. Okay, so these are the layers we are getting from superficial to deep. Okay, in here we will discuss some of the layers in details. Okay, so the superficial layer is the fatty layer, fascia of Camper, and deeper layer is membranous layer. And in these two layers, differentiation in these two layers, they starts below the level of the umbilicus. This is umbilicus. Below the level of umbilicus, two layers are present. Above the umbilicus, these two layers are generally fused with each other. Okay, not separately visible. And below the inguinal ligament, it is continuous with the Colles fascia in the perineum. Okay. So this is the modification of the superficial fascia at different levels of the abdomen. And the skin of the abdomen is supplied by these nerves. Okay, lower 5 intercostal nerve. So in the subcutaneous tissue, there will be embedded cutaneous nerve. Like other areas you have got during supex, infex or thorax, cutaneous nerves are present. So cutaneous nerves are coming from lower 5 intercostal nerves, subcostal nerve, that root value is T12, and 10th intercostal nerve is at the level of umbilicus. Okay, there are segmental supply. Okay, so 10th intercostal nerve is supplying the umbilicus. That's why at the appendix is the visceral supply is coming from T10. That's why in appendicular infection or appendicitis, pain is referred to near the umbilicus. Okay, because same level of supply. And other nerves you will get are the iliohypogastric nerve and ilioinguinal nerve. These are branches from the lumbar plexus. You will see these nerves during the dissection of inguinal region and the rectus sheath. Okay. and the blood supply are coming from intercostal vessels, arteries and veins, and the nerve supply, veins and the lymphatics, the skin above the umbilicus, the superficial veins and lymphatic drain to the axilla. Okay, umbilicus, the level of umbilicus acts as a watershed line, okay, over the abdomen. Watershed line, you know, from above it and below it there are separate drainage system. Okay, so above the umbilicus it is going to axillary nodes, and below the umbilicus going to drain into the long saphenous veins and superficial lingual. Next, we will discuss the abdominal muscles in details because it is taking part in formation of the rectus sheath. Okay, we will discuss the three important muscles. These are the muscles present here: external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, rectus abdominis, and pyramidalis. These two are contents of the rectus sheath. Okay, and there are also contents are nerves, vessels, and these nerves and vessels are lying between the internal oblique and the transversus abdominis muscle. Okay, neurovascular plane of the abdomen lies between the internal oblique and the transversus abdominis. Okay, so first we will go through the external oblique muscle. Its origin is from outer surfaces and lower borders of lower 8 ribs. Here is the origin of the muscle, external oblique, and it is interdigitating with the serratus anterior. Here is the serratus anterior and the latissimus dorsi, and fibers pass medially and inferiorly. You can see the fiber direction like putting your hand in the pocket. Okay, downward, forward, and medially. This is the fiber direction of external oblique. During dissection, you have to identify the muscle from the fiber direction. Okay, and it will be outermost, downward, forward, and medially. This is the fiber direction of external oblique, and it is inserted into the anterior half of anterior two-third of outer leaf of the iliac crest. Okay, here outer leaf of the iliac crest it is inserted, and it forms a aponeurosis in the inguinal region, passes anterior to the rectus muscle, forming the anterior layer of the rectus sheath here, and it forms lower end of the external oblique. It is becomes upturned and thickened to form the inguinal ligament. Okay, and this ligament also lacunar ligament and reflected part of inguinal ligament, these are extensions from the inguinal ligament. Okay, these are modifications of aponeurosis of external oblique. Okay, all these ligaments are asked in your viva and theory. So inguinal ligament, you can see here, this is inguinal ligament. Okay, here. So inguinal ligament, the aponeurosis of external oblique is folded back from anterior superior iliac spine. Here is anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle to form the inguinal ligament. And from the inguinal ligament, this small ligament is extending. See, this triangular ligament, this is lacunar ligament. Okay, apex of the lacunar ligament is attached at the pubic tubercle, and base is free, forming the boundary of the femoral sheath. Okay, so lacunar ligament is triangular, attached to the pectineal line. Here it is attached over the pectineal line, and lateral free border is forming the medial margin of the femoral ring. You have got this term during femoral sheath, lacunar ligament, boundary of the femoral ring. Next we are going to the insertion. Insertion into the pubic crest along the inguinal ligament, pubic crest, and here is one gap for superficial inguinal ring. That is formed by two crusts, superior and inferior crust. Okay, they are together forming the superficial inguinal ring, and insertion is extended over the pubic bone. Here all of this portion is the insertion. Here is the origin. Here is some modifications are occurring as aponeurosis, and all of this portion is the insertion of the external oblique. Okay, so here is pubic crest. Here is located the superficial inguinal ring pubic bone. Here midline structure is the linea alba, and anterior wall of the, it is forming the anterior wall of the rectus sheath, and also some fibers are inserted over the gyphoid process. Okay, so this is insertion of the external oblique. It is given in your OSPI question. Okay, you will be asked about origin, insertion, nerve supply, action, like this. Okay, it when acting separately, now we are going to the action. Okay, when acting separately, the external oblique flexes the vertebral column laterally and rotates it to the opposite side. And if the thorax is fixed by contracting both the external obliques, you can tilt the symphysis pubis superiorly and flex the trunk during posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, and movements of the iliac crest determines the direction of the tilt. Next, we are going to the internal oblique. Internal oblique muscular origin is from the lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament. Here, external oblique is arising from above. Internal oblique is arising from below, mainly from the iliac crest, inguinal ligament, like this. Okay. So, internal oblique muscle origin from lateral 2/3 of the inguinal ligament, anterior 2/3 of the intermediate lip of the iliac crest, lumbar fascia. This is thoracolumbar fascia. It has 3 layers. Okay. So lumbar fascia and muscle fibers arch over the contents of the inguinal canal anterior to the rectus muscle, and the fibers pass medially and superiorly. Okay. So this is the origin of internal oblique. Here you can see this muscular portion is arising from here. This is internal oblique, and in this region it is arching over the contents of the inguinal canal, and these are the contents. In male it is spermatic cord, in female round ligament of the uterus. Okay. Next we are going to the insertion. Here insertion will be in the midline and towards above. Okay. So into the costal margin, here is the insertion into costal margin, upper 3 as fleshy fibers, next 3 as aponeurotic fibers inserted into the linea alba. Linea alba is midline structure and inserted into the between the gyphoid process, halfway between the umbilicus and the pubic symphysis, up to this level. Okay, and anterior layer fuses with the external oblique. Here this how it is forming the rectus sheath, and posterior layer fuses with the transversus abdominis, forming posterior wall of the rectus sheath. So this aponeurosis of internal oblique, it is dividing into 2 layers, anterior layer and posterior layer. Anterior layer is fusing with the external oblique to form anterior wall of the rectus sheath, and posterior layer is fused with the transversus abdominis to form posterior wall of the rectus sheath. Okay. Next, we are going to the conjoint tendon. What is conjoint tendon? This is forming a boundary of the inguinal canal and also asked in your viva. So, halfway between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis, here umbilicus, here is pubic symphysis, above will be the umbilicus. Halfway between this, at this region, the aponeurosis of internal oblique and transversus abdominis fused with each other to form the conjoint tendon. Okay, and it forms the anterior portion of the rectus sheath and inserted into the pectineal line behind the superficial inguinal ring. Here is superficial inguinal ring. These two muscles, internal oblique and transversus abdominis, is arising from lateral part of the inguinal ligament and going joints together to form the conjoint tendon, which is forming roof of the inguinal canal and then going to be inserted in over the pectineal line, and here it forms the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. Okay, in the medial half. And the right side of the muscle twists to the right. These are the functions of the internal oblique. The right side of the muscle twists to the right, left side twists to the left, and these are the nerve supply. The lower 6 intercostal nerve, subcostal nerve, iliohypogastric nerve. These are the nerve supply. Next, we are going to the transversus abdominis. Okay, external oblique is also supplied by the intercostal nerves, lower 6. Okay, up to the subcostal. Transversus abdominis origin is from lateral 1/3 of the inguinal ligament, anterior 2/3 of the inner lip of the iliac crest. Okay, from lumbar fascia, lower border and inner surfaces of lower 6 ribs interdigitating with the diaphragm. So this is origin of the transversus abdominis. And insertion into the Gifford process, linea alba, halfway between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis, and then it is joining with the internal oblique. The posterior lamella joins with the internal oblique below and forms the conjoint tendon below, okay, near the inguinal region, and inserted into pectineal line behind the superficial inguinal ring. And these are the functions of the transversus abdominis. It helps to support the abdominal viscera, maintain the intra-abdominal pressure, stabilizes the lumbar spine. It is supplied by the lower 6 intercostal nerve, subcostal nerve and iliohypogastric nerve. Okay, nerve supply and action. Next we are going to the rectus abdominis, which is the main content of the rectus sheath. Rectus abdominis is the segmental muscle. See this long muscle you can see vertically arranged. This is rectus abdominis. Okay. And there are tendinous intersections. These white lines are the tendinous intersections. These here fibrous tissues are attached and which is attaching the muscle with the anterior lamella of the anterior layer of the rectus sheath. Okay, and the intermediate portions they becomes hypertrophy during exercises and they form the six packs. Okay, so there are three tendinous intersections are present. So rectus abdominis is segmental muscle. It has two heads. One head is arising from anterior surface of the pubic symphysis, other head from the pubic crest, and they are inserted above here. Okay, over the anterior aspect of fifth, sixth, and seventh costal cartilages, and it has adhesions on the anterior surface, these tendinous intersections, and it has segmental blood and nerve supply from the intercostal vessels and intercostal nerves, and the rectus abdominis helps in flexing the trunk. Okay, so the rectus muscles or recti are the most powerful flexures of the vertebral column when raising the head from a supine position, and a movement often used to strengthen the abdomen rectus abdominis muscle during raising the head in the supine position. And it is the recti that contracts fast during this movement, and when the shoulder starts to rise upward, the obliques start to contract. Okay, so these are the positions of the abdominal muscles. These are paravertebral muscles. See, this is posterior aspect. You can see the vertebral body. These are paravertebral muscles, and these are the oblique muscles of the abdomen. This is rectus abdominis anteriorly, and these are the oblique muscles. Outermost external oblique, then internal oblique, then transversus abdominis. Then there is fossa. Fossa transversalis, extraperitoneal fatty tissue, then peritoneum. Okay, and this hollow area it contains the intra-abdominal viscera or intra-abdominal organs. Okay, and here anteriorly lies this rectus abdominis, vertically placed muscle. Okay, so now we are going to formation of the rectus sheath. Rectus sheath comes in your long question. Okay, understood the three muscles: external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis. Important for your practical OSPI question. This rectus sheath comes in your long question. Okay, theory. So its formations are different at these three levels. Above the costal margin, here is the formation between the costal margin and the arcuate line, and below the arcuate line. Okay, we will discuss in details. So above the costal margin, anterior wall is formed by external oblique aponeurosis, and posterior wall here it is deficient, and the rectus muscle rests directly on the 5th, 6th and 7th costal cartilages. You can see in this cross section, this is external oblique aponeurosis which is forming the anterior wall. Posteriorly, it is lying directly over the costal cartilages. So, level A is above the costal margin. Okay. Next, this is level B, between the costal margin and the arcuate line. Between the costal margin and arcuate line, anterior wall is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis and anterior lamina of aponeurosis of internal oblique. See, this is external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis. At the lateral margin of rectus, it is dividing into two lamina, internal oblique. Anterior lamina is going anterior, fused with external oblique aponeurosis. Posterior lamina is going posterior to the rectus and fused with transversus abdominis, okay, and forming a respectively anterior wall and posterior wall of the rectus sheath. So, posterior wall is formed by posterior lamina of aponeurosis of internal oblique and aponeurosis of the transversus abdominis. So, this occurs between costal margin and arcuate line, okay. See here, like this you will see in dissection. This is rectus abdominis muscle. These are the tendinous intersection. And these tendinous intersections, there are specific levels. One lies near the umbilicus, other near the costal margin, and third one in between these two at the middle portion. Okay, in between umbilicus and xiphoid process, mid part. And another sometimes lies here between the pubic symphysis and this umbilicus. If fourth one is present, that is generally absent, lies at this level. Okay, and this whitish fossa-like structure, this is forming the anterior layer of the rectus sheath, which we have removed on this side. Okay. Here is the inguinal ligament, internal oblique aponeurosis, and you can see external oblique was downward, forward and medially. Internal oblique is upward, forward and medially. Okay, exactly at right angle with the external oblique. Okay, and the fiber transversus abdominis is directly transversely. Okay, muscle fiber directions are important for identification of muscles. Here is the rectus sheath formation, external oblique muscle. Here is, it becomes aponeurosis. See, this is external oblique. Muscular portions are lying in this area. Rest of the portion is formed by aponeurosis. So here is the muscular portion of external oblique. It is arising from above. Internal oblique arising from below, and upward it is inserted through muscular sleeves and aponeurosis. And this is origin of the transversus abdominis muscular area. Okay. Here you can see you have reflected the anterior layer of rectus sheath to visualize the rectus abdominis muscle, and these are the tendinous intersection. And in the midline, this all the aponeurosis fuse with each other and interdigitate to form the linea alba. Okay, which is extending from the xiphoid process up to the pubic symphysis. Here is the rectus. You can see the tendinous intersection. Fourth one, if present, located here. Okay. These are the muscle, rectus abdominis, and the tendinous intersections. Here, rectus abdominis, tendinous intersections, external oblique, aponeurosis of the external oblique. Here is the inguinal ligaments. And here is formation of rectus sheath have been shown via aponeurosis of external oblique and anterior layer of aponeurosis of internal oblique muscle. Here the muscle have been cut. See, outermost is the external oblique. See the fiber direction, downward, forward, medially. Next, deep to it is the internal oblique. See the fiber direction, upward, forward and medially. And this is transversus abdominis. Fiber direction is directly transversely arranged. Okay, and this is rectus abdominis lying in the just lateral to the midline. Okay, this is vertical fibers, and these are the tendinous intersection, one at gyphoid process, one at umbilicus, one at mid portion between the gyphoid process and umbilicus. Here is the formation. You practice a schematic diagram like this for rectus sheath. Okay, these are the muscle bellies of external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, and here it is dividing into two. This is not good diagram. You will get better diagrams in your books. Here is rectus abdominis. These are fusing together to form anterior layer and posterior wall of rectus sheath, and in the midline all the aponeurosis is fusing to form the linea alba. So rectus sheath above the gyphoid, anterior wall is formed by external oblique, posterior layer by costal cartilage. From gyphoid to halfway between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis, this is the level of arcuate line. Okay, and arcuate line is formed by lower margin of the fossa transversalis. Okay, so from gyphoid and halfway between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis, here anterior layer is formed by external oblique and anterior lamella of internal oblique, and posterior layer is formed by lamella of internal oblique and transversus abdominis. And below the halfway between umbilicus and pubic symphysis, again here posterior layer is deficient. Okay, so aponeurosis of all the muscles, external, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, all pass anterior to the rectus abdominis, and posteriorly it lies over the fossa transversalis. Okay. Next, we are going to the contents of the rectus sheath. Contents are rectus abdominis muscle, pyramidalis, and superior inferior epigastric vessels, and lower 5 intercostal vessels and nerve. Okay. You can see here, this is the rectus abdominis muscle. Here are the vessels have been shown. Vessels are lying just above the posterior layer of rectus sheath, beneath the muscle, deep to the rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, and posterior layer is separated. It is not attached to the rectus abdominis. There is no tendinous intersection posteriorly. Okay, so here the coming from above, superior epigastric. Superior epigastric is branch of the internal thoracic. Okay, and inferior epigastric is coming from below, and they are anastomosing with each other on posterior to the muscle or sometimes within the substance of the muscle. Okay, and nerves are entering into the rectus sheath by piercing through the lateral wall of the rectus sheath. Okay, that's why during some operations in the rectus sheath, you have to retract the rectus abdominis muscle laterally, because if you retract it medially, high chance of injury to the nerves. Okay, this is comes in your explain why. Why during operations of rectus abdominis you have to retract the muscle laterally. Okay, because there is chance of injury to the nerves which are entering through the lateral wall of the rectus sheath. Okay, here you can see the vessels. These are the vessels lying posterior to the muscle, forming anastomosis. This is inferior epigastric, from above superior epigastric. And these are the intercostal nerves entering into the rectus sheath from the lateral side. Okay, so these are the contents. Rectus abdominis, pyramidalis is lying here, and the superior inferior epigastric vessels and the intercostal nerves. See here, here external oblique aponeurosis is retracted. Ilioinguinal nerve have been shown. This is ilioinguinal nerve and this is iliohypogastric nerve. Okay, iliohypogastric will pierce through the internal oblique and transversus abdominis, enter into the external oblique, and ilioinguinal nerve will enter into the inguinal canal and comes out through the superficial inguinal ring. This is superficial inguinal ring formed by the superior crus and inferior crus, which is a deficient area in the this external oblique aponeurosis, and indirect inguinal hernia occurs through these inguinal rings, deep and superficial inguinal rings. Okay, and this is location of pyramidalis. Pyramidalis is sometimes absent. Okay, not always present. This is content of rectus sheath arising from the pubic symphysis and pubic crest and inserted over the linea alba. Linea alba, the midline fossal structure. Here is the pyramidalis, rectus abdominis. On this side, pyramidalis is absent. Okay. Another thing is divarification of rectus. During pregnancy, there is stretching of all the abdominal muscles, and these rectus abdominis of two sides are pushed away from each other. Okay. After the delivery of the baby, the patient recovers, but the rectors cannot oppose sometimes. Okay, then you have to suture the gap between the two rectus abdominis. Okay, and this separating away of the rectus, this is known as rectus divarification. Generally occurs in female patients after pregnancy or some diseases. In generalized weakness of the muscle occurs, and they cannot contract separately, cannot contract properly, then it can occur. Okay. This is the treatment of myofascial pain by, you have to suture this to near the linea alba. Okay. These are the tendinous intersections, six packs formed in the rectus abdominis. Next, other things are inguinal glands. Inguinal glands are the lymphatic lymph nodes. Okay, proximal groove lies parallel to the inguinal ligament. These are enlarged tender inguinal glands. Part of a these glands are enlarged during generalized lymphadenopathy, likely in tuberculosis. And secondary depositions can occur also in other diseases. It has proximal groove and lessons in the local structure like skin of lower anterior abdominal wall, gluteal region, skin of scrotum or labia. These lymph nodes are enlarged. Distal superficial glands and skin of leg area is drained by long saphenous vein and all drained to the deep inguinal glands along the femoral vein. Next, deep to the transversus abdominis is fossa transversalis. It lines deeper aspect of transversus abdominis, fuses with inguinal ligament, continuous with fossa iliaca, which is covering the iliacus muscle, and except in the region of femoral vessels, it forms the anterior wall of the femoral sheath. Next is deep to it will be extraperitoneal fatty tissue. It is a connective tissue layer. It is fatty, separates the fossa transversalis from the peritoneum. If thin, they are in close contact with each other. Next, deepermost is the peritoneum. Okay, peritoneum has peritoneal pouches are found in the region of deep inguinal ring and medial portion of the posterior wall. Also, peritoneum is covering the posterior abdominal wall. It is covering the posterior aspect of anterior abdominal wall. Okay, peritoneum you will get separate class. These are the rectus abdominis. Okay. This is rectus divarification. Two rectus are separating with each other. Okay. And this generally occurs during straining, during maturation, defecation, or coughing. This occurs, and there is high chance of injury to the internal organs in case of rectus divarification because it is protecting anteriorly all the organs